Kuwait isn't just a land of sand dunes and shiny skyscrapers. It's a country with deep roots and global impact. From ancient trade routes and imperial tug-of-wars to oil booms and modern conflicts, Kuwait has shaped and been shaped by some of history's biggest moments. So if you're curious how this small Gulf nation plays such a big role on the world stage, keep watching. Because we're diving into its complex history, strategic geography, powerful economy, and rich cultural identity. Kuwait's story begins in the early 1700s when a group of families from the Anisa tribe, called the Banu Utub, settled along the Persian Gulf coast. Then in 1756 they chose a leader from the Al-Sabah family, marking the start of the autonomous Sheikhdom of Kuwait. Throughout the 19th century, Kuwait became a buzzing hub for trade, especially between India, Africa, and the Arabian Peninsula. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, because the Ottoman influence loomed large. One ruler, Abd Allah II, leaned toward the Ottomans, but things took a dramatic turn when his brother, Mubarak the Great, took power in 1896 by assassinating him. Mubarak's bold power grab was one of the rare cases of political violence in Kuwait's history, and when he took that power, he flipped Kuwait's foreign policy, turning to the British for protection. So in 1899, Kuwait signed a treaty giving Britain control over its foreign affairs, essentially becoming a British protectorate. But the real tug-of-war for Kuwait's borders was only just beginning, because fast forward to 1938, oil was discovered in Kuwait. As a result, it instantly turned this small emirate into a highly desirable asset. That same year, Iraq began making moves to assert control, even backing a failed uprising against the Kuwaiti ruler. Eventually, Kuwait gained independence from Britain on June 19, 1961, but just 6 days later, Iraq renewed its claims. It took pressure from British forces and the Arab League to push them back. And while Iraq didn't formally recognise Kuwait's independence and borders until 1963, they still kept eyeing its strategic islands. Then the Iran-Iraq War happened, from 1980 to 1988. Kuwait thought that they'd be safe if they backed Iraq. But that didn't stop Iran from targeting Kuwaiti facilities, bombing refineries, staging sabotage attacks, and even attempting to assassinate the Kuwaiti ruler in 1985. By 1986, Iran changed tactics and started attacking oil tankers in the Gulf. At this point, Kuwait got so desperate, it asked both the Soviet Union and the United States for help protecting its ships. The situation pushed Kuwait to deepen ties with its Gulf neighbours, leading to the formation of the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC. Despite this, no alliance could have prepared Kuwait for what happened in 1990. Because on August 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded and took over Kuwait, claiming it as their 19th province. Why? Oil, debt, Gulf access, and Saddam Hussein's ambitions for pan-Arab leadership. The world responded fast, so by January 1991, a US-led coalition launched airstrikes, followed by a ground assault. After the war, Kuwait was in survival mode, politically and economically. A divide grew between those who had stayed during the occupation and those who fled. Many called for change, especially after the ruling family's actions in exile raised eyebrows. In response, Kuwait held parliamentary elections in 1992, giving more voice to Islamic and independent candidates. Meanwhile, the UN formally drew the Iraq-Kuwait border, giving Kuwait even more land and oil wells. But Iraq wasn't happy. Tensions remained high until 2003, when US and British forces used Kuwait as a staging ground to invade Iraq as a response to Saddam Hussein's alleged weapons programs. And for Kuwait, this was more than just military logistics. It was personal. To them, it was a necessary step to finally eliminate the threat Saddam posed once and for all. But that moment of closure didn't last long, because after the US took over Iraq, a violent insurgency broke out, which led to chaos and extremism taking root in their own backyard. So what happens when the people start to demand more say, but the political system in Kuwait still depends on one family? Well, let me tell you. After suffering a stroke in 2001, Emir Sheikh Jaber Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah stepped back from public life. Then, when he passed away in 2006, things got complicated. The Crown Prince, Sheikh Saad Al Abdullah, who had been next in line since the late 1970s, briefly became emir, but he was seriously ill and unable to govern. Still, he refused to step down, creating a rare succession crisis, and it took 9 tense days before Parliament voted to remove him, which was actually just moments before he finally agreed to abdicate. Power then passed to Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed, the former foreign minister who had already been running the show behind the scenes. And you'd think that after this shift, the political climate in Kuwait would calm, but the early 2000s were marked by constant clashes between Parliament and the ruling family. Parliament kept threatening to investigate ministers, which triggered votes of no confidence. Each time things got too tense, the emir would dissolve the parliament and call for fresh elections, sometimes just months apart. And although it kept the system going, it never really solved anything. The good news is, even with the tension, some big reforms did happen. In 2005, women finally won the right to vote and run for office. Then, just 4 years later, 4 women were elected to parliament, which was a historic first. Kuwait also changed how elections worked. The old 25-district voting system was replaced by a 5-district format, aimed at reducing vote buying and tribal influence. Still, the underlying tug-of-war between the monarchy and opposition parties never went away. By 2011, this built-up frustration finally boiled over. Allegations of corruption sparked a wave of protests, mostly led by youth and opposition groups. The backlash forced the Prime Minister to resign and the government to dissolve a pro-regime parliament. A new election was then held in early 2012, and the opposition won this time around. But that didn't last long, for one main reason. Kuwait's constitutional court threw out the results, citing procedural issues. Then the emir made a bold move by changing the voting system again, which in turn impacted the country's social, cultural, and economic development. So when oil prices dropped in late 2014, Kuwait felt a lot of pressure to stay afloat. And their solution, you ask? Well, the government slashed subsidies for fuel, electricity, and water. International groups like the IMF and World Bank noticed this move and praised it. But the same couldn't be said back at home, because the rising prices hit the public hard and the opposition gained ground. So during the 2016 elections, candidates pushing anti-austerity agendas won nearly half the seats. That led to another round of tension between Parliament and the government, resulting in cabinet reshuffles and watered-down reforms. But by the end of the decade, oil prices started to bounce back, which eased some pressure. Then came 2020. The pandemic hit global oil demand hard, and Kuwait's revenues took another dive. At the same time, the government was locked in a standoff with Parliament over whether to raise the country's debt ceiling to keep paying expenses. By January 2021, tensions flared again. Lawmakers moved to question the Prime Minister about his cabinet choices. He resigned, but was reappointed just days later by the Emir and tasked with forming a new government. So what's the outlook for Kuwait over the years? According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, or EIU for short, Emir Sheikh Mashal Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, or whoever he chooses to take over, will likely stay in full control of the country through 2028. But here's the catch. His leadership style is a bit more forceful than his predecessors, and that's caused a lot of tension between him and Kuwait's parliament, which has a long history of pushing back against the ruling family. Back in January, the Emir dissolved parliament yet again, something that's happened more than a few times in Kuwait's recent history. This kind of back and forth between the government and lawmakers has led to a political gridlock that makes it really hard to get things done, especially when it comes to passing new laws or moving major projects forward. And it's not just the politics slowing things down. Kuwait's bureaucracy, meaning the government departments and processes, moves slowly too. That frustrates both citizens and investors, especially those hoping to team up with the government on public-private partnerships, also known as PPPs, to boost development. As a result, some investors are pulling back, waiting for things to settle before committing to big deals. On top of that, Kuwait's economic growth is expected to slow down between now and 2028. That's mostly because oil production is levelling off, and oil prices are projected to dip. In 2024, Kuwait's GDP was estimated at around $158 billion. That's a jump of about $133 billion since 1981. Though the growth hasn't exactly been smooth, By 2030, it's expected to grow by another $24.5 billion, still trending upward overall, but with the usual ups and downs. Since oil is still Kuwait's main source of income, lower prices mean the government has less money to spend. And when government spending drops, it affects everything from infrastructure to job creation. Now that we've explored Kuwait's political and economic landscape, let's zoom out and look at the terrain itself. Its land, sea, and climate. Kuwait sits at the northwest corner of the Arabian Gulf, bordered by Iraq to the north and west and Saudi Arabia to the south. It covers about 17,800 square kilometres, or 6,870 square miles, with a 290 kilometre, or a 180-mile coastline that's been central to both the economy and Kuwaiti identity for generations. And if you're wondering about the terrain, you guessed it. It's mostly desert. No mountains, no rivers, just dry sandy plains that slope gently toward the sea. And as such, Kuwait's bond with the sea runs deep. Its coast is divided into two distinct zones. One follows the Arabian Gulf, and the other wraps around Kuwait Bay and Khor Subiya, where the shoreline becomes a stretch of mudflats and shallow water. Off the coast, you'll find 9 islands. The largest is Bubiyan, spanning 863 square kilometres, or 333 square miles, and connected to the mainland by a bridge. Further north lies Warba Island, marking Kuwait's edge along the Gulf. But the most iconic one has got to be Failaka Island. Before the 1990 Iraqi invasion, Failaka was a full-blown tourist destination, with sandy beaches, sports facilities, restaurants, and a 5 million square metre resort complex. Visitors would take ferries from Ras Al Aad in Salmiya to relax and swim in its clear waters. Today the island is slowly being redeveloped to reconnect with that legacy, modernised but still rich with cultural meaning. Then, in the north, you'll find modest ridges like Jal al-Zor, rising to 145 metres or 476 feet, and valleys like al-Ramam Wadi. Now head south and you'll find a much flatter land. That is, with the exception of Ahmadi Hill, which stands at 137 metres or 449 feet. So because of this wide open terrain, Kuwait was historically a transit zone for nomads and caravans. But the lack of clear natural borders made it tough to define territory, especially before modern borders were drawn. And one solution they found was in 1965, when Kuwait and Saudi Arabia created a neutral zone, an oil-rich area that both nations still share equally today. Okay, now that you know about the general landscape of the country, let's talk about its climate. And let me tell you, it's pretty harsh, even by desert standards. Summers are long, dry and scorching, with average highs over 45 degrees Celsius, or 113 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the world's hottest temperatures ever, which reached 52 degrees Celsius, or 126 degrees Fahrenheit, was recorded here in July 1978. And when it comes to winters, the season is pretty short but surprisingly chilly, with lows hitting negative 6 degrees Celsius, or 21 degrees Fahrenheit in January 1964. But even with its tough climate, Kuwait supports an impressive variety of plant and animal life, especially after the rain, when parts of the desert briefly burst into colour. So let's break it down. Kuwait is divided into 4 main plant ecosystems: sand dunes, which are home to hardy shrubs and desert grasses; salt marshes along the shore, which features saltwater plants; low-lying depressions which bloom with purple and blue wildflowers when it rains; and the open desert, which is dotted with resilient grasses and bushes. As for the wildlife, there's more here than you'd expect. Imagine, you'll find 280 bird species, 38 types of reptiles, and around 50 types of mammals, ranging from wolves and wildcats to hedgehogs and gazelles. But here's the thing, Kuwait's landscape has always influenced how people live. And it's the culture that they've developed because of that that truly brings the country to life. On the surface, Kuwait might feel modern and global. You'll find shopping malls, fast food chains, and plenty of Western influences. But underneath that, it's still very much grounded in tradition. Take the Diwaniyah, for example. This is a regular gathering of men, usually in a home or a tent, where they talk, sip tea, and then catch up. It might seem pretty simple, but it's actually a big part of how relationships and even politics work in Kuwait. Besides this, Kuwaitis love celebrating major Islamic holidays like Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, and Eid al-Adha. And they take pride in national events like Independence Day and Liberation Day, which marks the end of the 1990 Iraqi occupation. And with celebration comes food. Here, traditional meals often include full, a fava bean paste with garlic and lemon, falafel wrapped in flatbread, and of course hummus. But if that's not enough to satisfy your craving, you can also get spiced rice with meat or seafood from the Gulf. And if you're in the mood for international flavours, you won't find a shortage of Western fast food spots spread across the capital. But going back to tradition, Kuwait still embraces its Bedouin roots, especially in the arts. In fact, sardu weaving, which is done on a traditional Bedouin loom, is still taught today, and you can see examples at places like Sardu House. Unfortunately, the Iraqi invasion damaged many of Kuwait's museums. The National Museum was looted and burned, and only part of it has reopened. That's why private collections like the Tarek Rajab Museum have become so important. They showcase everything from ancient jewellery to musical instruments. Besides this, another standout landmark is Sif Palace. Built in 1910, it's one of the royal family's official residences and a great example of Islamic architecture. As for sports, Kuwait blends old and new. Camel and horse racing remain popular, and falconry is still practiced by a few wealthy Kuwaitis. But today, football, sometimes referred to as soccer, takes centre stage. Kuwait has modern stadiums, a national team, and first joined the Summer Olympics in 1968. Now that you know more about Kuwait, I want to know, if you had the chance to visit this country one day, what's the first thing you'd want to try? The food, the beaches, or the desert? Sound off in the comments section below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.